Ladies and gentlemen, we have a tremendous guest today for the 8th installment of the Kurz Wind Podcast. Today we have on Maja Jorgensen, and please correct me if I pronounce that improperly, Maja, from HOVE Americas. We were actually introduced by a mutual friend, Trisha Long, who works at Vestas. So we were able to get into contact and then ultimately schedule this podcast today. We've been able to, at Kurz, learn a lot about HOVE Americas and the products that they're selling, and it truly is a fascinating product that solves a lot of issues that you see when it comes to maintenances of power and just general maintenances of your wind turbines. So I can't do the introduction as well as Maja could to the business and to her personal backstory. So firstly, Maja, I want to say thank you for coming on to the show, and could you please tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, thank you, Dan. A little bit about myself. So I am from Denmark, and I've been in the States for about 4 years now. My background is in business. I have some degrees from Copenhagen Business School, kind of across the board, international business. And then I've been working in a couple different countries with basically trying to build organizations and companies. So my focus has always been on business development and marketing. And that's kind of my, I guess, professional background. I came to the US because I met my significant other, who is American, and we were both working in Southeast Asia for a couple of years and wanted to move on and figure out what the next thing should be. And we thought, why not try to go to America? And so I got a job with the Danish consulate in Chicago, which maybe some of the people out there have been in contact with on different occasions. There's a team up there that's focusing on just solely on wind energy and working with Danish companies within the wind industry and bringing them into the North American market. I became part of that team and started to work with HOVE in Denmark through that. And I worked with HOVE for about 2.5 years as their consultant. And that was around the time when I helped them launch the US subsidiary, and they needed someone to run that here in the States. And that's when I came on board and was fully employed by the US subsidiary of HOVE Americas. So I guess that's just like very briefly my background and the journey to where I am now.
Yeah, it's a fascinating backstory, and we've talked about this offline quite a bit. You covered a lot of different industries before you ended up in the wind industry. So I guess my next question would have to be, why wind, and how did you end up at the Danish consulate working exclusively basically in wind with Danish products? You know, what really drew you to the industry in the first place?
I mean, honestly, I want to give you like a great philanthropic answer, that it's just my biggest passion, and I've always, since I was a kid, dreamed of working in the wind industry. It's not true at all. I never knew anything about the wind industry until I got that job in Chicago. I will say that I definitely, it's important to me what it is that I work with, and I won't work in an industry that are against my values. So, you know, when I was applying for the job, it was definitely an added benefit that it was with a focus on an industry that is doing something good for the world. And that was the extent of it. You know, great. It's in an industry that I could probably feel connected to in some way. And then it wasn't until I actually got there and I started digging into the field more that I came to understand what it's all really about, and appreciate more of, you what it is that we're doing as an industry. Yeah.
I love it. It's a great answer. And it honestly leads me to my next question, which has to be, you entered into the industry, what was this, 4 years ago into wind?
Yeah.
And now you're 4 years in. You're one of the most passionate people that I've talked with when it comes to wind and the product that you provide to the market, like this awesome value-added product. Did you run into anything surprisingly good about the industry, or what things have you latched onto where you can say, wow, this was a big surprise to me once I actually delved headfirst into the industry and started meeting the people who are a big part of it?
God, yeah. I think so I've only ever worked in the wind industry in the US.
Mm-hmm.
So my answer and my connection to it might have been very different if I was in Europe or in Denmark, where the industry is so mature. I actually, I definitely have a bit of an entrepreneur inside of me, and the industry is still very much maturing. It's not like everything isn't figured out yet in North America. It's not in Europe either, but they often claim that it is a bit more. But here it's more of like a little bit more of like the wild, wild west, and people still just figuring it out along the way. And that really speaks to me. I love that dynamic in the market here. And then specifically about the industry, it's very, the first thing is it's very focused on the high tech. I don't know if you can call it high tech, but you have these giant pieces of machinery, and everything about them is fascinating. It's just even fascinating how you have to build infrastructure to get just one of them to the site that you're trying to put them up at. Like, that part is fascinating. Everything about like how they're built and how they work is fascinating. They run off of wind, a natural resource that you can find anywhere. That's fascinating. So just like the technical aspect, I love working with engineers. There's a lot of engineers in this industry, and I really appreciate that. I've always been very, very interested in the engineering fields, even though I do not have, and maybe because I don't have that background myself. And then what I've learned along the way is that, I've had a lot of opportunities to go out on the site and climb turbines. And I love that there's like nature actually plays a big part. I live out here in Denver, Colorado. A big part of that decision was being closer to nature and closer to the mountains. Sites in, one of the sites that I spend most time at was out in Montana, with a view from top of the turbines. You could see the Glacier National Park, and it's just amazing, right? And so I love that it's, you're outdoors, getting fresh air, actually getting views of nature and being in touch with that. And then I really, really appreciate all the people in the industry, especially the guys that are working out at the sites. They are, I always feel like we feel so welcome when we go to the sites. It's a pleasure to experience the dynamics of, the teams. Like, they're kind of a little family at each site. And I find that really, really cool and fascinating. And it's in North America, it's a really good industry where it's a great opportunity for us to really get closely connected to our end users. So in Europe, it's a little bit more like our parent companies communicates mostly with headquarters, and in North America is much more like the site managers have a much bigger influence on the decisions that are made in terms of tooling. And so that's an opportunity for us to really get to know and build these relationships directly with the guys at the site. And we are really, really enjoying that, and getting the feedback on our products directly from the guys who use it every day too. So just, there are a bunch of different things, but I would say just the general dynamics and the people of the industry. I really enjoy.
Yeah, and I could not agree more. The family dynamic is certainly something that you see at every site. And I get to go to a lot of sites due to the nature of what I do in wind. And I can't tell you how many times they're cooking chili in the kitchen and there's a bowl ready for me when I walk in. Coffee's hot. It's already in front of me. Hey, do you want cream and sugar? Talk to me. What do you got? I don't think there's many other industries where you can have that close-knit group of people who are all working towards the same goal, and it's keeping the machines running.
Yeah.
So it is really, really neat to be able to be a part of that community and get to know it. So I couldn't agree more with you. You actually said something very interesting to me, which is the industry is young and we're still, quote unquote, figuring it out, right? And I think your product fits nicely into this segue of, one of the issues that the sites are running into, your product solves. So if you're okay with it, give us a little bit of a rundown on your product line, and what challenges you were actually able to solve for a lot of the technicians that are working on these towers day after day.
Yeah. So let's see where to begin. So HOVE makes grease pumps, essentially. A basic way of looking at it is it's an alternative to grease guns, or like these good old big bucket or pail pumps that a lot of sites will recognize. So most sites will have at least one of those two, maybe both, that they use for greasing the bearings in the turbine. And the first version of our product was actually originally developed on a request from Vestas back in Denmark. That's almost 20 years ago. So back then their technicians were still pumping grease manually into the bearings. And as the turbines were starting to get bigger and needed more and more grease, that became kind of an occupational hazard, and the techs were getting muscle injuries due to this. So Vestas was looking for a solution that would be more automated so that their technicians wouldn't get hurt from it. And that's how we came up with the first version of our pump. And we're now on version 4 of that. It's called the Easy Grease. It's basically a little hard case suitcase thing that you bring up. The latest version weighs about 20 pounds. You bring it up, you connect it with a hose to the bearing, you put on the grease cartridge with the grease you need, and then you put in how many grams do you want it to push in, and you press start, and it does the job for you. So it's a very simple, easy to use pump that does that job automatically, where you don't have to do anything manually, basically. And today it's not really the same business case anymore, because people don't use manual pumps anymore. They use electrical grease pumps or bucket pumps. So today it's more about, the turbines are getting extremely large now. And so it's extreme amounts of grease that you have to put in there. Like a normal main bearing at a normal maintenance will probably take around 5 kilograms of grease, which is around 12 grease tubes for a normal grease gun. So if you imagine, the grease gun isn't necessarily super fast itself. You have to carry up 12 tubes just for the main bearing. And then you have to change out each tube every time you've pumped in 400 grams. So it's pretty tedious. You need someone actively to sit there the whole time and focus on that task. And then you need to change the grease tube every 400 grams. It becomes pretty time consuming and tedious, and it leaves a lot of room for error. Are you sure that you got that exact amount of grease in there? The grease guns will break. Then what do? They're battery driven. They'll run out of battery while you're up tower. What do? It's just a lot of hazard, and it's pretty slow. So with our products, often we can save at least like an hour of manpower per turbine, and sometimes you're looking at like 5 hours of manpower per turbine, depending on the turbine, depending on the current methods that the team is using. So that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to decrease the downtime, decrease the man hours that are needed. We're trying to make the task easier and more secure, to make sure that the greasing gets done properly too. That's very important. And then at the same time, the way that we're packaging our grease most often actually ends up saving the sites a lot of money on grease, because we package in larger cartridges, which leaves less for waste, less packaging cost. We buy bigger bulks, all this kind of stuff. So often a site will actually save money by buying grease through us instead. So I would say that that's a quick rundown. We have 2 different pump models. One is for refilling auto lubers, and another one is for direct lubrication of bearings. So it really depends on the turbine. And then we have a new one coming out, which is a hybrid of the 2. So that one, maybe we can talk a little bit more about that later, but that's one of our newest things that we're working on, which we think will be very good for some applications where we're not currently very present. So
that's a great overview. So it sounds like you're saving man hours and you're saving the cost of grease. To me, that's a 100% win. It's a no-brainer for a lot of these sites to implement the Easy Pump product. So you talk about the hybrid. You had mentioned we could talk about it down the road, but I'm too pumped to hear about it, pun intended. Yes. So can you explain the hybrid product and the applications where it's best suitable and the ones where you wanted to go after a little bit better?
Yeah. So it kind of came along in a weird way. So one part was that some companies will have both turbines with auto lubers and turbines without auto lubers, and they don't want to buy 2 different pumps necessarily. So we wanted to create one product that were able to solve both those tasks. But then what happened at the same time was that we were seeing that when some of our customers had started using the pump that we call the refiller, which is made for refilling auto lubers, they had started using that to flush or purge their main bearings. It pushes a lot of grease very, very fast, and it's able to flush. I think it's like a GE 1.5 main bearing in like 16 minutes or something like that. Which
wow!
People who've done that with grease guns would probably appreciate that.
Absolutely, they would.
And so. And we'd never thought of using it that way because we'd made it for a different purpose, and that's a great example of innovation in the field. So they that one customer had used it for that single purpose, and then they were saying to us, well, we also want to be able to purge our blades. So can we do that? And with the refiller pump, you can't do that because it can't handle that higher pressure that the blades have compared to the main bearing. So we're like, well, you could try to do it with the Easy Grease pump, the other one that's for direct lubrication, but that one doesn't push out. It doesn't have as high of an output as the refiller pump, and it also had some struggles with a particular application. I don't know why I wouldn't be able to say that. It's the GE blade bearings. We had some issues. The blade bearings have a distribution block on there that our pump couldn't quite figure out how to deal with. So we were like, well, there's this potential. We see a potential here because it might not be something that only this one customer would be interested in. And at the same time, we really want to help this customer of ours find a solution to this issue. So our engineers in Denmark went to work, and they've, they thought, well, why not take our idea of making a hybrid pump and incorporate these other capabilities in it. So we've worked hard over the last couple of months, and we believe we've found a solution where you can use this hybrid pump for basically any purpose. You can use it for auto lubers, you can use it for general lubrication of any bearing in the turbine, and you can use it to purge any blade, or both the blades and the main bearing in the turbine, which is something that people are doing to a large extent now. And it is super fast. It does not fail. It's a very, very strong product. So we're very. It's still being tested in the field. We're like at the end of the prototype testing, and probably we'll put this into production very soon. So we're very excited about this. And hopefully the guys in the field will be too.
I'm sure they will be. I mean, a universal product that can do blade bearings and main bearings, that must save them so much time. And you have to consider these guys are 100 meters off the ground, so safety is paramount. And if you can decrease the amount of time that these guys have to spend up tower, that just inherently increases their safety. Yeah. I think it's a phenomenal product. And you're obviously a very innovative company, and you have a team of engineers in Denmark working on fielding responses from the field, and then also developing a new product to try and find solutions for the things that come up. I think that's fantastic. And I think it's a big reason why you're growing so quickly. So besides innovation, would you say there are other pillars within HOVE that you guys really stand on, maybe principles on which you operate, that have really helped you propel into the American market and grow quickly?
Yeah, so I would say for HOVE Americas, we're very new. We're a very small team. We've had an opportunity to really think about what kind of company we want to be in this market. And one of the first things that we told ourselves is that generally in this industry, customer service doesn't have this big of a focus. People are generally accept lead times of like several months, and they're like, oh well, that's what we're used to, I guess we have to work with it. And we kind of saw an opportunity for us to just deliver the best possible customer service for this industry. And so that's been one of our, I would call that a pillar for us. Some kind of we don't like to call it customer service, sounds so boring, but at least like creating like a really great customer experience in all parts of the value chain, basically. So we want to be a really good partner to our suppliers and other partners, and then we want to be a really good supplier to our customers. So we have a goal of a maximum 2-week lead time. So right now, when we receive a purchase order from a site or anyone, we have it turned around in maximum 3 days from our warehouse. So generally right now, our lead time is around a week for any order that's not totally out of the ordinary, right? We try to really work closely with our customers, any larger customers, on forecasts to stay on top and make sure that we stock up on everything that they need. So as soon as they need it, we can ship it out right away. That's one thing in lead on like the aspect of lead time. We really see the value in the guys working out in the field on the turbines, getting their feedback. They are our end users. So we've used different platforms that they're very active on to directly ask them for feedback and ideas for future products. And some of those ideas and some of those pieces of feedback we have also used to implement and develop new features for the new pump that we're coming out with, for example. So we're actually really using it. And at the same time, we're constantly talking to them to figure out what will be helpful from our side, and how can we show them that we appreciate them. So another thing that we did this year was to develop what we call the care package, which is just a simple little thing. We add a little package with each pump that we ship out now that has instructions that you might need, a little troubleshooting kit. It has some extra O-rings for the output or the input on the pump. Those sometimes get damaged, and it's a hassle. So why not have some like right at hand? We had some stickers made. Guys at sites love stickers, put on their hard hats, whatever. And we had another sticker made with all of our contact information. Again, direct contact information for us and for Tyler that they can stick on the pump and have available to them, even if they're up tower and need to give us a call from the turbine, so we can help them troubleshoot on the spot. So we are really we definitely have a goal of being the best in the industry in terms of delivering a great customer experience. And I think that we're well on the way, and we still have a lot of ideas and a lot of things that we still want to do on that aspect. So I think that has helped set us apart. We're using some alternative channels to communicate to our end customer too, which I think is giving us some attention. Hopefully, people are generally happy about our product, and when they're not, we really do anything we can to help them move on as fast as they can. Like if our pump fails in the field, we have now launched a loaner pump program. So if we need to fix your pump, you'll send that in for repair, but at the same time, we can ship you a loaner pump that we know works well. And you can use that while we're repairing your own pump. So just things like that. I think just trying to be a good company that is good to work with, and I think that will pay off. It's we're doing well, and I think it'll pay off long term too. So I think that's probably another big pillar for us, I would say.
Absolutely. I've been to so many different sites here in the Midwest, and I've asked, hey, what do you think of HOVE? Especially at different Vestas sites across Illinois and some up into like Minnesota, Michigan. And a lot of the feedback I get is you guys are very customer centric, and you're involved in the places where techs tend to hang out. Facebook, you're on LinkedIn. You're doing this outreach to, I think, the forgotten few that keep the towers running. Mm-hmm. And not only that, you're going above and beyond for your customers, and it's seen in the field. So I do want to say awesome work on that. And I can reaffirm what you just told me as it's 100% accurate. You guys are doing an excellent job, and I'm excited to see how you take that to the next level over the next 3, 5, 10 years. Yeah. And that leads me, Maja, to my next question. When today is in its infancy, we've discussed this. Do you anticipate any changes to the industry over the next decade or more? And if so, what do you expect to see change or happen?
I mean, I can speculate. I have no idea what's going to happen. I kind of, a lot of people will probably say, oh, it'll mature and maybe it'll become more like in Europe, more mature industry, more centralized decision-making, everything more centralized. I kind of hope that won't happen. Personally, I hope it's going to stay the way it is, stay wild, stay fun, stay focused on the people out there and the families out there. So I guess that's a little message from here. Maybe we don't want to be the way that everyone else is. So that's one part. Another part that will happen and is happening already is the offshore wind industry. Mm-hmm. So, right now, there's, I believe, still only 5 offshore wind turbines that are currently operational off of the coast of Rhode Island, I believe. But there are several new sites, offshore sites, that have been awarded to different companies, and they have started started construction on some of those sites, I believe. And this is going to be huge. it's there's only so much land, but there's a lot of ocean.
Oh yeah.
And there's been a lot of challenges, and it's been really fun to see the development of that, because it's kind of its own industry in a way. I went to before anything was built, I went to a conference up in Annapolis for offshore wind in the US, and it was just full of these, like, you know how when you go to AWEA today, it's all the marketing people are there, all the sales people are there. You have to look really, really hard to find the people who are actually making decisions for the company. And so this conference in Annapolis a couple of years ago was just full of all the decision makers. It was the CEOs, it was the founders of the companies that were very new, that were just like going all in on this new industry, and everyone were just excited and making partnerships, and meeting new people and looking for opportunities. And it was a very, very fun, new, dynamic, refreshing thing to be part of. And I'm actually a little proud of my home country's role in developing the new industry. I know that the Danish embassy and consulates have have definitely helped the offshore industry learn from Europe and from Denmark, and I think that has helped accelerate the growth of that new offshore industry. So I think that's been very cool. And I see that, in 10 years from now, there are going to be offshore turbines all the way up and down the East Coast, and we're going to maybe start seeing floating foundation turbines off of the West Coast as well. So some of the guys out there that have, who want a little bit more adventure or some new adventures in the field, they should start preparing themselves for those offshore jobs, because those are going to be awesome.
It'll be fascinating. They're even talking about the Great Lakes here in the United States getting turbines. It's crazy. There's a lot of land in Texas, Oklahoma, Kansas, and it's filling up with turbines quickly. Yeah. And with onshore, as you know, there's limited room. But if you open up the shores and off the coastlines, the growth could be 10x every year, 20x, depending on how quickly they can actually build these projects. Of course, I'm going to be super fascinated with how that actually changes the dynamics of parts, how the turbines operate. There's obviously salt water, humidity, winds are probably going to be higher. How do the technicians get out there and climb up the tower? Are they going to be sleeping in some sort of sleeping quarters with a kitchenette up tower and stay there for a few days? The way that it is trending is going to be mind-boggling to be able to see how onshore versus offshore begins to separate and turn into its own almost two different entities. So
I can tell you that on some of the offshore farms in Europe, the guys will be staying at this platform, basically kind of like like on an oil site, right? Like an oil platform. And some of those places will have like their own, chef. A chef cooks them meals 3 times a day. They'll have like a little movie theater. They'll have a bar. Like they'll have all this cool stuff. And these guys are just like staying there for like 3 months at a time, having a great time together. And then
sign me up for that. That sounds fantastic.
Yeah.
So what are the differences between the European wind market and the North American or American wind market? I know you've talked about more of a centralization of parts and maybe purchasing and so forth in Europe. Are there any other differences that you're able to observe now that you've spent some time dealing with both markets?
Yeah, and I spent some time, but I haven't, I'm really not an expert on the European wind market. My impression is that, as you said, everything is more centralized. In the US, the decision, the guys at site have equal power in deciding things, making decisions. So, and in Europe, it's much more top down. A lot of stuff is decided from headquarters and then implemented out across the fleet. Here, it's like you can try to make a deal with headquarters. That doesn't mean that it will be implemented across the fleet, though. We've had very big companies where we're like, we're celebrating that headquarters approved our solution, and now they want to implement it across the fleet. Then 4 months later, we're still not selling anything to that company. And then some guy from a site calls and says, hey, I want to use your product. I've talked to some of the other sites. They also want to use your product. And then that's how we end up getting the business of that company. Because it's, generically spreading from site to site, word of mouth. People trust each other, so they take recommendations from each other. And that's how that works. It's much more organic, the way it spreads here in the US. And you have to be aware of that. And honestly, for me, that's great. Like, I want to be communicating with the guys at the sites. So that works out for me personally, and for our team, we really like it. I'm sure it can be a frustration for some European companies coming over here and trying to figure out a totally different dynamic. But for us, it's quite fun.
Oh, I would agree. I think if you can, with the growth of wind in America, I hope we never lose sight of the guys who are working on the towers. I hope they always have their say in the decision-making process and can push the ideas up to corporate, because they deal with the turbines on a day-to-day basis. I would love to be able to see those guys throwing suggestions up to the top of the food chain per se, or the different people at headquarters, so that they can you can have the people who are actually working on the tower say, hey, this is actually what we need. And not look at it from, well, what's the price of this part versus this part? Well, this one's a little bit cheaper. Why don't we implement this? I'm sure it doesn't happen across the board, but it does happen sometimes when the site guys might say, hey, it's a little bit more, but here's why it saves us money in the long term and it keeps us safer. Yes. So I'm hoping as the industry grows, we're able to have that sort of camaraderie between the two different sections of these big companies, the people in corporate and then the people actually working on the towers.
Yeah, exactly.
That is happening.
And I'm seeing that in the US already. And I think it's great. Many companies here are the headquarters. If you come to them and you say, we present our product to them, they're like, oh, that sounds great. Now go talk to my site guys and see if they like it too, or before we go any further. Mm-hmm. And I respect that, right? It's like, sometimes for us, it can be a longer process and we had to figure out how it all works, but I definitely respect that way of making decisions. And it'll be good for us in the long term too. We don't want a product out there that the guys at site don't like, right? So. Exactly.
Yeah, I think you're spot on. And obviously you've been working closely with the sites. Feedback's been phenomenal and your product is excellent. So Maja, before I ask you the last question, I first want people to know how to get in touch with you. How can they find you, your brand? Tyler, who you also work with in Denver. How do people get a hold of you?
Yeah. So obviously you can go to our website, HOVE-Americas.com, and go to the contact page, and there'll be like our general contact email and phone number, and that goes directly to us. You can also go to our Facebook page, which is, if you search @HOVE Global in there, you'll find it. That is really, we try to make that kind of our hub for information and communication with the guys at site. We just launched a YouTube channel where we post all like kinds of troubleshooting videos, instruction videos, all kinds of resources that you can possibly imagine about our products. We post on the YouTube channel. It's also called HOVE Global. You can email me or Tyler directly. I don't know if maybe we can put out, when we put out this podcast, we can put out our email and contact information as well.
Mm-hmm. I'll put that in the show notes along with all the different links to your social media, your website, and all that. Yeah.
So we are very much about, we do not shy away from giving direct contact information to anyone who wants it. So we'll make sure that it's available to everyone. Anything we can help with, any questions, any feedback, always very welcome.
Awesome. And I'll certainly make sure that all of those different links are in the show notes. I want to check out the YouTube channel. I haven't spent enough time on there to be able to see all the different videos that you've put up, but I'll be sure to share some of those too as I come across them. So Maja, I wrap up every question or every podcast, with a question that's personal. So I stole this from Tim Ferriss, the author of the 4-Hour Work Week.
Yes.
Sounds like you know who Tim Ferriss would be. He's got a top performing podcast on Apple, iTunes, Spotify.
I literally listened to that an hour ago.
So, really?
Yeah.
Which one did you listen to?
The newest one that was just published is with, what's it called? It's one of the CEOs out in Silicon Valley. His name is Ben Horowitz. It's the latest one that was just published. But if I had to recommend, like, the best one of all time is the one with Seth Godin. If anyone's interested, you should listen to Tim Ferriss podcast with Seth Godin. It is amazing.
Seth Godin. I've been a subscriber to his little newsletter. He'll send out 100 words basically all the time. And it's one of my favorite things to read on a day-to-day basis. I'm currently working through the podcast between Tim Ferriss and Neil deGrasse Tyson.
Yeah.
And that one gets pretty deep. So I'm having to hit pause every so often and just kind of understand what they're talking about. And when it comes to astrophysics and all these other, it's way above my pay grade. So I'm having to Google things and so forth.
It's a good podcast, that's for sure. And I will say, actually, the Seth Godin thoughts and ideas very much inspire the way that I'm trying to build HOVE Americas, honestly. So if anyone is interested in that, they should check it out.
Yes. And if anybody knows Seth Godin, let him know about our podcast.
Yes.
Of course. No, absolutely. I'll share Seth Godin as well as that podcast episode with Tim Ferriss in the show notes as a special shout out to you, Maja. So you've listened to Tim Ferriss. You probably know he asks this question intermittently. If there was a billboard you could place in the world universally, everyone could see it and read it, what would that billboard say?
I was like, I'm sure he's going to ask me that question, and I hate that question. I think it's I think it's the worst part of Tim Ferriss's. It's actually the only part of Tim Ferriss's podcast that I don't like. And
you can put that on the billboard if you'd like too.
Yeah, I mean, I don't like it because it's, a billboard is like 5 words max, and I feel like that's just. It's so bumper sticker. What would I put on a coffee mug? Like, I think it's just it's kind of cliche, and it's like, I think any valuable message has a little more depth than just bumper sticker. So I with that in mind, I think if I had to do it, it would probably be something like be authentic or stay authentic. I think that's something that I learned the last, couple of years. That's one of my core values and very important to me is, authenticity. Be honest, be real. Like, don't try to be something you're not as a person and also as a company. If we have a challenge, we communicate it to our customers. We ask their advice. We tell them the truth, and we try to work with them to find the solution that's best for them and for us. We try to be transparent and open, have, direct access. We try to show the world, like, who we are. That's also part of why how we're using our Facebook pages to, we post about the people that work in our company and the things that we do day to day. And here's our dogs, and like, these are the people and the people and the creatures that mean something to us. Try to open that up to the world so that people get to know us better and understand what kind of company we are. So I think that is probably one of the things that are most important to me, both in my personal life and in my professional life. So if I had to put something on a billboard, it would be that.
Be authentic. Yes. But I love the context that you provided after the fact. So really what you just said doesn't fit on a billboard, but I think the message stands true. And I do hope it inspires some people to, take a deep look into how they're handling themselves in personal relationships as well as professional. Yeah. We're all humans. I learned this from one of my mentors. He said, hey, you walk into a meeting, let's say it's with the CEO of a big company. he goes home to a family just like you.
Yes.
He wants to have dinner with his wife or his kids, maybe crack open a cold one or have a glass of wine. At our very core, we're all humans doing business or having relationships with another human.
Yeah.
And it's important to remember that.
That's the thing. And if I can just add one note on it, is a lot of companies especially are scared of being honest. They're scared, like if they fail, they're scared to share that, or if they're having a challenge, they're scared to share that because they don't want to seem weak. And I think honestly, yeah, that can be scary. And it makes you vulnerable, but I would say like 9 times out of 10, people actually appreciate it and they'll trust you more just because you're honest with them. Even if you failed, if you're just honest with people, they will appreciate that. And if you fail to be honest, people are going to see through it at some point. It's impossible to go through like a long-term career or a whole life or the life of a company without people seeing through that if you're not authentic. So might as well, be honest and be authentic up front. And I believe it actually creates stronger relationships. You can create stronger relationships by doing that and showing who you are. So yeah, just a final note on that.
I love it. I think it's Ray Dalio, who he's one of the largest hedge fund managers, Bridgewater and Associates, has the book out now called Principles, which I'm working through, but it's a deep read. He talks about radical transparency. Now, I don't know if he was the one who coined the phrase or if he's utilizing that in his book. But I think that's one of the values on which you stand is just radical transparency, being authentic. Businesses are afraid to do that. But hopefully we'll strip down those layers and get down to the core of each individual business, and they'll feel vulnerable enough to share who they are. It's humans doing business with humans. And ultimately, we're all here to have relationships with one another and grow. So I love that message, Maja. I really do. Any last words for the listeners here today? We covered how to get in touch with you. We covered the products. Anything else that you'd like to add before we sign off?
Just, never hesitate to contact us. We're always interested to hear from you guys out there. And keep an eye out for this new pump that we have coming out. It's going to be pretty awesome. And then, we'll see you out there, and hopefully we'll do a good job, and hopefully we can help you now and even more in the future. So let us know how we're doing.
Yes, absolutely. And at Kurz, we definitely want to showcase that new product when it does hit the shelves, I guess, or hit the warehouse. Do you anticipate 3-day or less lead times as well as for that product? Is that same goal is going to be in contention?
It's the same goal. I mean, we probably will have to do some kind of like pre-order thing because we already have several parties interested in that product. And, when you start a new production line, it's just natural cost. It's going to take us time to source the parts. So we probably will somehow launch that now we're ready to start taking orders, and the first orders that are being put in will be, it'll take a couple of months, probably 2 months or something, until we can get that product out to them. But then very quickly after that, we'll be able to stock up on those products as well and keep the lead time down to 2 weeks. So that's definitely the plan for everything that we have. Yeah. Awesome.
Maja, keep us posted on the release of this new product. We certainly appreciate you coming on to the podcast here at Kurz. It's been an absolute pleasure, and hopefully we can have you on in the future for the launch of the new hybrid pump when it does end up hitting the shelves.
Yeah, maybe I'll let Tyler do that one.
Absolutely. I'd love to meet Tyler and get to know him and get the whole team on board. So Maja, signing off here, but I do appreciate the time, and I really wish you luck here in the future of your business.
Thank you, you too.